Leadership does not begin with power. It does not begin with charisma, education, or even vision. True leadership begins with a revelation of purpose. You can never become what you were not born to be. Every product exists for a reason, and every human being on this earth was born for a purpose, an assignment that is not only specific, but essential. That purpose is the seed of leadership. A bird does not need to be taught how to fly. Fish are not trained to swim. The ability is built in because their purpose demands it. Likewise, when you understand your purpose, your potential begins to activate. Leadership is not something you pursue. It is something that flows naturally when you discover why you exist. Leadership is not about control. It is about becoming. You don't become a leader because someone gives you a title. You become a leader when you discover your reason for being. Purpose is what separates people who exist from those who live. It is the difference between wandering and walking with direction. Many people are busy but not effective. They are doing a lot but not becoming anything. That is because they haven't found their purpose. And without purpose, there is no leadership, only movement without meaning. Let me say this clearly: you were born to lead. Not over people, but in your area of gifting. The seed of leadership is inside every human, but it must be germinated by purpose. The tragedy of life is not death. The greatest tragedy in life is to live without discovering your purpose, because when purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable. You will abuse your time, your energy, your relationships, and your opportunities. You will seek to lead in areas where you are not assigned, and you will fail. Not because you are incapable, but because you are misaligned. When a person discovers their purpose, they become dangerous, not in arrogance, but in confidence, because now they don't need to copy anyone. They don't need permission to be who they are. They don't need applause to move forward. Purpose gives you internal authority. It causes you to stop chasing affirmation and start chasing assignment. Leadership is not about being the boss. It's about being responsible for what you were born to do. That is why purpose must be discovered before leadership can be expressed. You cannot lead others until you can lead yourself. And self-leadership begins when you stop living for survival and start living for significance. It is purpose that gives birth to that kind of living. Consider a seed. No one can look at it and see the forest inside, but the forest is there. When it is placed in the right environment, what is hidden begins to emerge. Purpose works the same way. It is your internal assignment waiting for discovery and development. And once purpose is known, leadership begins to emerge without force. Purpose attracts provision. It attracts people. It attracts problems and solutions. When you are walking in purpose, you don't have to beg for followers. You don't have to manipulate people. Leadership flows out of alignment with your assignments. That's why the most powerful leaders in history were not those who sought power, but those who discovered purpose. They could not be ignored because they had something the world needed, and they knew it. In fact, purpose gives you immunity to distraction. When you know why you're here, you stop wasting time trying to fit in. You don't have to be everywhere doing everything. Leadership is not business, it is accuracy. You become focused, disciplined, and clear. And clarity is one of the most powerful tools of a leader. Purpose is also what gives leadership longevity. Charisma may impress people, but it does not sustain a leader. Good looks, good talk, and good marketing might attract attention, but only purpose will sustain momentum, because purpose creates conviction, and conviction gives you staying power. Leadership that lasts is born from purpose, not ambition, not desperation, not imitation. Purpose is what gives leadership meaning. It is the compass, the foundation, the anchor. It is the reason you don't quit when things get hard. It's the voice that reminds you that you were born for this, even when no one claps for you. Even when they criticize you, even when the path is lonely. Purpose keeps you moving, because purpose is not about applause. It is about assignment. There is a critical difference between ambition and purpose. One is self-driven, the other is divine. Ambition is born from ego. Purpose is born from destiny. Ambition seeks to climb. Purpose seeks to serve. True leadership does not arise from a desire to be seen, but from a burden to fulfill a specific assignment. Leadership is not the result of a man trying to become great. It is the result of a person discovering the greatness already within them, planted by their creator. The modern world has confused ambition with leadership. People want platform, microphones, followers, and recognition, believing those are the signs of influence. But real leadership often begins in obscurity. Purpose grows in the dark like a seed in the soil. Before you ever step onto a stage, purpose develops you in silence. Leadership is not a title you earn. It is a calling you answer. Ambition says, I want to be in charge. Purpose says, I must complete my assignment. Ambition pushes people to positions they are not prepared to carry. That's when we see so many leaders who are public successes but private failures, because ambition took them where character could not sustain them. When leadership is driven by ambition, it becomes toxic. It breeds comparison, envy, manipulation, and insecurity. But when leadership is driven by purpose, it becomes transformational. It produces clarity, stability, and impact. A person who is led by purpose cannot be bought. They cannot be threatened. They do not serve for personal gain. They serve because they were born to. Their identity is not in the position. They were a leader before anyone acknowledged them. The position only confirms what purpose already reveals. That's why you must never confuse popularity with purpose. You can be famous and still be a failure if you are outside your assignment. Purpose is what validates your leadership. Ambition may open doors, but it will not keep you in the room. Purpose sustains. Purpose aligns your gift with your generation. It connects your identity with your influence. You don't need to campaign when you walk in purpose. You don't have to manipulate people to follow you. Purpose has a voice. It calls to those who need what you carry. When leadership is birthed from purpose, it becomes irresistible. Ambition makes you compete. Purpose makes you complete. You are not trying to outdo anyone. You are simply trying to fulfill what you were born to do. Purpose eliminates jealousy. It silences insecurity. Because once you know your lane, you stop swerving into other people's paths. Leadership driven by purpose stays focused. It is not distracted by noise or flattery. It is not shaken by resistance. It is anchored in identity. Think of Moses. He was not ambitious. In fact, he tried to run from leadership, but purpose found him in the wilderness. It was the fire in the bush that reminded him you were born for more. Leadership found him, not because he sought it, but because purpose required it. The same is true for every true leader. You don't chase influence. Purpose causes influence to chase you. Many people want to lead, but they haven't asked the deeper question why. If the answer is ambition, they are already disqualified, because leadership is not about self-promotions. It is about self-sacrifice. It is not about rising above people. It is about lifting people. You cannot truly lead if your only goal is to be admired. Leadership is responsibility, not applause. It is stewardship, not status. Purpose-driven leaders are dangerous to systems of oppression. They cannot be controlled because their leadership is not fueled by what others give them. Their source is internal. They are not waiting for validation. They are walking in revelation. They lead not because they want to, but because they must. There is something in their spirit that will not let them settle, something bigger than comfort, bigger than position, bigger than the opinions of others. That something is purpose. When leadership is a manifestation of purpose, it becomes sustainable, produces transformation, not just transactions. It shifts cultures, not just policies. Because purpose never exists in isolation. It is always tied to others. That's why leadership is never about the leader. It is about the assignment. And the assignment is always connected to people. You cannot separate leadership from service. You cannot separate purpose from impact. When you discover purpose, leadership becomes the natural byproduct. Every human being walking on this planet is a carrier of divine intention. You were not born to simply exist. You were not a mistake. Your birth was not a coincidence. It was a calculated decision by eternity to release a solution into time. Purpose is the original intent in the mind of the Creator when He decided to give you breath. Purpose is the reason behind your design. You were sent to earth with something to do, something to become, something to solve. But here is the tragedy: most people will die full of dreams, full of ideas, full of books unwritten, sung, solutions undiscovered. They will die without ever discovering why they were born. And that is the greatest failure in life, in the absence of wealth, not the absence of fame, but the absence of purpose. Leadership is reserved for those who make the decision to discover why they are here. Every human has purpose, but only the few who pursue it become leaders. You are not a leader because of your popularity or personality. You become a leader when you begin to live from your original intent. Purpose turns ordinary people into extraordinary leaders. Purpose transforms followers into pioneers. Purpose is what awakens the leader within. It is possible to be highly educated and still be ignorant of your purpose. You can have multiple degrees and still be irrelevant to your generation. Because education is not the key to leadership, discovery is. The system may train you to perform, but purpose calls you to transform. You are not here to fit in, you are here to break molds. You are not here to repeat history, you are here to write it. Inside every human is a gift, and that gift is connected to purpose. That gift is a signal of your assignment. You were wired to fulfill something specific, something unique, something no one else can do quite like you. But until you discover that gift, until you connect it with your purpose, you remain dormant. You function, but you do not lead. You survive, but you do not influence. You exist, but you do not transform. There are people sitting in boardrooms managing millions, but still living in confusion. There are people with massive platforms, but no internal directions. Because purpose is not found in titles. It is found in truth. And the greatest truth you can ever discover is why you were born. Until you find that, you may succeed in the eyes of men, but you will fail in the eyes of your assignment. Purpose is what gives birth to leadership, not position, not promotion, not performance, but purpose. When a person discovers their purpose, They begin to lead themselves first. They begin to make decisions based not on comfort, but on calling. They stop wasting time trying to imitate others and start cultivating what's inside of them. That is the beginning of leadership. Not external achievement, but internal alignment. Purpose puts you in your own category. You no longer compare yourself because no one else has your assignments. You are not intimidated by someone else's success because their lane is not your lane. You stop trying to please everyone because your focus becomes obedience to the calling on your life. That level of clarity and conviction is what the world calls leadership, but it is simply the result of discovering why you are here. Leadership is not exclusive to certain people. It is not reserved for the wealthy, the powerful, or the famous. Leadership is the natural result of discovering and living out your purpose. That means the janitor can be a leader. The street vendor can be a leader. The mother at home raising her children can be a leader. Because leadership is not a role, it is a revelation. Once you see who you are and why you are, you begin to influence those around you simply by being yourself. You don't have to announce that you are a leader. Purpose speaks louder than position. It shapes your behavior. It governs your choices. It defines your associations. People are drawn not to your ambition, but to your authenticity. And authenticity is born when purpose is embraced. That's why purpose is not optional. It is essential. Because without it, leadership becomes mimicry. But with it, leadership becomes legacy. You are sent to earth with a treasure, a gift, a voice, an idea, a solution. But you must discover it. You must pursue it. You must be intentional about unlocking the reason for your existence. Because until you do, leadership remains buried. It remains potential. It remains unrealized. Purpose is the only path that activates the leader within. Purpose is the reason for your existence, but vision is what gives that purpose direction. Purpose is the why, but vision is the where. Without vision, purpose remains a silent potential, powerful but unexpressed, present but undefined. Vision is what translates your internal assignment into external action. It is what gives your purpose structure, strategy, and focus. Vision is not something you create. It is something you discover. It is the unfolding of the destination already built to your design. No one walks into leadership by accident. Leadership begins when purpose is discovered, but it is sustained when vision is embraced. Vision is the detailed portrait of your purpose in motion. It is what helps you see what is possible before it happens. It gives you the ability to stand in the present and see the future. That ability is what separates leaders from followers. Leaders live by visions. They do not respond to circumstances, they respond to purpose. And vision is what keeps them on course. You cannot fulfill what you cannot see. And many people lie frustrated not because they lack potential, but because they lack vision. They are gifted, talented, capable, but blind. Purpose without vision is like a car without a steering wheel. You may have the engine, the fuel, and the power, but without direction you crash or stall. You waste time and energy trying to figure out where to go next. Vision eliminates that confusion. It becomes the map for your purpose journey. Every leader must be a person of vision. Not dreams, but vision. Dreams are imaginary, vision is intentional. Vision is purpose documented. It is when the invisible becomes visible on the canvas of your minds. When you close your eyes and see where you are going, even when your current situation does not look like it. That's the power of vision. It pulls you forward when nothing around you makes sense. Vision becomes your compass in chaos. It anchors you in storms and accelerates you in seasons of clarity. Leadership demands vision because people do not follow noise. They follow directions. A leader without vision is a hazard. They may have charisma, but they are dangerous without clarity. Vision gives your leadership accuracy. It defines your destination. It outlines your values. It sets your priorities. You begin to say no to good things because you have seen the right thing. You stop chasing trends because you are committed to trajectories. Vision is not about seeing with your eyes. It is about seeing with your spirit. You do not need perfect conditions to have vision. In fact, some of the clearest visions are born in the darkest places. Joseph saw his vision in a dream, but he was betrayed, enslaved, and imprisoned before he ever stepped into leadership. Yet the vision kept him. Because once you've seen where you're going, you cannot die in where you are. Vision becomes a lifeline. It reminds you that what you're experiencing is not the end. It's just a part of the map. Without visions, you will be distracted by everything. You will say yes to things that look urgent but are relevant. You will follow crowds instead of callings. You will waste years trying to become what others expect instead of pursuing what you were shown. Vision simplifies your life. It filters your decisions. It shapes your relationships. It organizes your energy. You stop doing 100 things and start doing the one thing that matters. The greatest leaders were not the smartest. They were the clearest. They had a vision that was bigger than comfort, bigger than criticism, bigger than convenience. Vision gave them discipline. Because when you truly see your future, you begin to adjust your behavior to match it. Vision determines your lifestyle. It governs your habits. You don't prepare for where you are. You prepare for where you're going. That is the mark of a visionary leader. Vision also attracts provision. People will support what they can see. Resources flow toward clarity. Ideas align when purpose is made visible. That's why writing the vision is not optional. It's essential. You must see it, speak it, and structure it. A clear vision gives people a reason to follow you. It gives your team alignments. It gives your actions consistency. When the vision is clear, movement becomes unified. Leadership is impossible without vision, because people don't just follow you, they follow where you are going. If you don't know where you're going, you will take others on a journey to nowhere. Vision is not just for you. It is for everyone connected to your life. Your vision gives meaning to their connection. That is why a leader must protect their vision at all costs. Not everyone can see what you've seen. And if you let the blind speak louder than the vision, you will forfeit your assignment. True leadership is not a position someone gives you. It is not a badge someone places on your chest or a title engraved on your office door. Leadership is born out of self-discoveries. It is the result of a personal journey inward, not a public search for applause. Until you discover who you are, why you are, and what you carry, you cannot lead effectively. External affirmation is temporary, but self-discovery produces conviction. And conviction is what makes a leader immovable. We live in a world obsessed with image. People are chasing followers like awards and attention, thinking that visibility is leadership. But leadership does not begin on a stage, it begins in a mirror. You must first discover the truth about yourself before you can guide others. You must come to terms with your identity, your design, your wirings. Because leadership that is based on performance will eventually collapse. Only leadership born of identity can stand the tests of time and pressure. Self-discovery is not about self-promotions. It is about alignment with your original design. You were born with a purpose. That purpose was encoded in you before you took your first breath. But most people never take the time to uncover it. They are so busy seeking validation from others that they ignore the voice inside themselves. Leadership requires silence before it demands volumes. You must learn to be quiet enough to hear the whisper of who you are. A person who has not discovered themselves is easily manipulated. They are unstable, always changing according to the opinions around them. They live by approval, and approval becomes their drug. But when a person discovers themselves, they become anchors. They don't need the crowd to clap. They don't need the world to agree, from a place of internal security, not external affirmation. You were not born to blend in. You were not created to be a copy. The moment you try to be someone else, you have already failed in leadership, because leadership requires authenticity. And authenticity is the fruit of self-discovery. You must know what you are not in order to embrace what you are. This is why comparison is the enemy of leadership. It robs you of confidence by measuring you against standards that were never designed for you. There is something in you that the world needs. There is a voice, a gift, a vision, a solution locked within you. But it cannot be released through imitation. It only emerges through self-awareness. That's why the first act of leadership is not speaking. It's seeing. Seeing yourself, seeing your strengths, seeing your limitations, seeing your potential. That level of insight creates authenticity. And authenticity creates influence. External validation fades. One day they will celebrate you, the next day they may criticize you. But when you lead from self-discovery, your identity is not shaken by people's opinions. You are not addicted to applause. You are committed to assignment. That kind of leadership is rare, but it is what the world desperately needs. Leaders who are not chasing popularity, but pursuing purpose. Self-discovery produces confidence. Not arrogance, but confidence rooted in clarity. When you know who you are, you don't need to prove anything. You simply show up. You lead from within. You don't perform, you become. And when you become, people follow not because you ask them to, but because your life speaks louder than your words. Many want to lead others, but they have not yet led themselves. They want influence, but they have not found identity. That's why their leadership is shallow, because you cannot export what you have not discovered. Real leadership is the overflow of self-discovery. You lead out of who you are. Your decisions, your direction, all flow from identity. Self-discovery requires honesty. You must confront yourself. You must deal with your fears, your insecurities, your doubts. That is not weakness. It is strength. Because the leader who is honest with himself becomes trustworthy to others. The world follows people who know who they are, not people who are perfect, but people who are authentic. Leadership demands that you stop pretending and start becoming, that you stop chasing validation and start walking in revelation. There is no shortcut to self-discovery. It is not a class you take. It is a process you live. It involves reflection and direction. You must examine your past, understand your present, and envision your future. You must identify your unique design and stop apologizing for it, because everything you need to lead is already inside you, waiting to be uncovered through discovery. Leadership is not about changing who you are to fit the mold. It is about becoming who you were born to be.